Visually with the organizer to see if we have the two online speakers connected. I don't think that's the case. So I will get started here by discussing the objectives of today's panel. Of course, since the start of the full-scale war by Russia and Ukraine, there has been much discussion about the development and humanitarian aid, and also about the future, so what's going to happen moving forward. So let's get started here with some basics. We will have 60 minutes to cover these very complex issues. That's going to leave us with roughly 15 minutes for a Q&A session at the end. And I'm going to start with you, Michael, if you allow me. So if you could briefly elaborate what the EU has been doing, what has the EU done so far to help people of Ukraine, but also other countries affected by the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine.
Yeah, thank you, Martina. First, it's working great. First, it's really a pleasure to be here. First time I come to Bratislava. First time there's an Ambrela Forum. It's a perfect match, and I really enjoy being here. And I enjoy the fact that for once we are not discussing humanitarian aid with Germans, with Dutch, with Swedes, or with Belgians, or Danes, but with the people from Central and from Eastern Europe, actually. And hopefully we can come back to that. Well, the Ukraine crisis is special in many regards. It is a huge humanitarian crisis, obviously, but there are other huge humanitarian crises. It's not the dimension of this crisis that makes it unique. What makes it unique is that it is in the heart of Europe, that it is so fast. You know, 2.5 months ago, we didn't have this kind of humanitarian impact, with now about 15 million people on the run, either inside the country or leaving the country. The worldwide impact is also huge, and we are going to speak about that, I'm sure. And thirdly, of course, what makes it also special is for once we have a crisis where we can cooperate with a functional government. This is new for the humanitarian sector. In most cases, the humanitarian sector in a way supersedes the local structures. Here you can work with the government, at least in the largest part of the country, obviously. So what did the European Union do? And allow me to focus only on the humanitarian response, because obviously the European Union has, as Slovakia has done, and so many other countries, used all its toolbox, the full range of possibilities. You know, if this forum had taken place, say, on the 1st of February, I would have told you that since 2014, we have EU humanitarian aid in Ukraine, but it's concentrated on Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts. It is concentrated on work on both sides of the line of control, or line of contact, where we simply look into the basic humanitarian needs of the most vulnerable parts of the population. For an annual amount of about 27 million euros. Today, not even 3 months later, we have already mobilized 243 million euros. And I'm only speaking here about humanitarian aid. You know that my department also manages civil protection, where under the Union Civil Protection Mechanism, with the generosity of our member states and also some other countries like Norway and Turkey, we have now shipped goods for more than 300 million euros into Ukraine, for example, from the hub here in Slovakia, close to the border. So under humanitarian aid, and let's focus on that, we have now about 25 contracts for operations in Ukraine and in Moldova, for the benefit of Ukrainian refugees that are passing through Moldova. About 50% is for food and basic needs, so it's cash assistance, because people who are on the run, of course, the first thing they need is food. The other 50% of these 243 million euros go in almost equal parts into, for example, shelter, and you just heard the Deputy State Secretary who was speaking about housing needs. Then there is health, of course, there's water, there's protection, and in health, it's not only, so to say, the normal basic health, it's a lot also of psychosocial support for traumatized children, traumatized people who had to flee the war zones. So within 3 months, the European Union has increased by almost, let's say, 1,000% its assistance to Ukraine, and we are only now mid-May. So by the end of the year, I'm sure we are going to have much, much more. We are doing this with our partners, and I'm very grateful to have people in need here, because you are one of our partners in the Ukraine crisis. We have activated, of course, all the partners that are able to work in Ukraine, in particular the United Nations. For example, you cannot ensure food security without the World Food Programme, but also UNHCR. We work with, of course, the Red Cross, including the Ukrainian Red Cross, but we work in particular with the civil society. And I'm very happy that already about 30% of this amount has been contracted and is being implemented by civil society organizations from across the European Union, but also increasingly so from Ukraine proper.
I hope my mic is on. It is. Thank you. That's terrific, Michael. Madam Secretary, you already alluded briefly to Slovakia's response. If you could give us a bit more detail, we would appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And first of all, welcome back to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's really nice to have you here after so many years. Yes, this crisis has been really unprecedented. 90 days ago, nobody would anticipated that in Ukraine there would be Russian aggression and there would be a war, because the war is really the ultimate way of solution of problems, and it means destruction, it means poverty, it means crisis and flow of refugees, and yes, for Slovakia it has been a really unprecedented situation, because many people decided to leave Ukraine, and today it is 6 million people who left Ukraine, mostly women and children, and 8 million are internally displaced. So this is really the huge number. I would like to put this in broader perspective. On Friday we had the FAC development meeting in Brussels, and we had the privilege to have lunch with UNHCR Filippo Grandi. And yes, this is not the only crisis in the world. And together with the refugees from Ukraine, we have to face the crisis of 100 million refugees in the world. But as it was said, this is the crisis in our neighboring country, and Slovakia, as other neighboring countries with Ukraine, we had to react. We had to react. We had to respond quickly and swiftly as possible. And we did it in 3 ways. First was the repatriation of some citizens who lived in Ukraine, and we tried to be instrumental to get these citizens from Slovakia to their home countries. Second, many refugees transited Slovakia. They didn't decide to stay in Slovakia, but today the number is around 400,000 refugees crossing Slovakia, and out of that 76,000 people decided to stay in Slovakia. And I think what I would like to use this opportunity to praise the European Commission, that what was really very quickly done and arranged, that these refugees could receive the temporary status to stay in the neighboring countries and in the EU countries, and that is really tremendous help to them, to their status in these countries. I'd like to use this opportunity to thank for mobilization of citizens in Slovakia to help refugees from Ukraine. It was not only the NGO sector, it was private sector, it was whole of society exercise, if I may say so. Great mobilization from the first days. Of course, it took around 2 weeks to create the system on the borders to help refugees, but I think after 2 weeks we managed to create 2 two places in Michalovce, in Humenne. We started to work on to build the logistic, to arrange the logistical hub in Eastern Slovakia to help to provide the humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. So it took time, but after 2-3 weeks, I think we managed, and slowly after maybe 3-4 weeks, it was not question only of a situation in eastern border of Slovakia, but also the question of whole society, because the mayors, the cities, the regional authorities, they have tried to help a lot. So really the great mobilization of all actors in society to help, because the crisis, yes, it is related to Ukraine, but also it is related very much to capacities of Slovakia to cope with this problem. To us, it has been a completely new situation. We never had such a situation in our modern history. So we were very thankful to and blessed that we are members of the European Union, that European Commission, European Union, the individually member states of the European Union were ready to provide the help and to increase the capacity of Slovakia as well. So this was, we provided already 5.8 million euros official humanitarian assistance, in-kind humanitarian assistance, 3.9 million euros, and also what the second aspect of our help was to engage with other international actors, which could be helpful in with this kind of crisis, and we provided some financial contributions to the organizations like UNHCR, IOM, Red Cross, International Red Cross, World Food Program. So again, this is about the coordination of all international actors which have been ready and which actually have experience with this kind of crisis in the world. Another example, practical example, logistical hub to provide the quick, fast assistance to Ukraine, and I think after several weeks, we slowly moved from the migration crisis to a refugee crisis to the integration challenges, because as I said, 70,000 people decided to stay in Slovakia. They have temporary status to live here, and many of them they started to look for jobs. Children needed to go to school, so the integration effort is another phase or is another step for society to deal with.
Yeah, thank you. It's been truly heartwarming to see how multiple stakeholders mobilized. I absolutely agree. Let's go to Andrea now to see what impact have you seen on the ground, and maybe also if you could talk about member states and their action, whether they're doing enough and in a timely fashion. Let's try to bundle these two questions together because I want to be mindful of everyone's time.
Mm-hmm. Maybe just to clarify also at the beginning, I'm heading People in Need Slovakia, which is the smaller sister organization of People in Need Czech Republic, which is a partner to DG ECHO, and I will come back to that point as well in our discussion later. So I think in all of the horrible things and horrible and sad things and shocking things happening around, and our stretched capacities of all of us, what has been really motivating for us is to see the immediate impact we can have through our work in alleviating the situation of people fleeing war in Ukraine. So that has been truly motivating to see that we that we can help, and that that there is solidarity in whole society, that we have support of many actors, and that humanitarian aid and later help in inclusion is relevant. So the civil society in Slovakia has been crucial in the very first phase, when there was the major influx of people coming in the first reception, in terms of providing a safe space, food, blankets, heated tents, first psychological aid, and working then together with the state to help to systematize the first response. Slovak NGOs within the first phase we have statistics of around 130 organizations being involved in assisting Ukrainians, have put together 700 employees, 7,000 volunteers. The estimated cost of support is estimated at 11 million euro. Slovak CSOs deliver each month 700 tons of material aid to Ukraine. We are working in Ukraine in all over the country, mostly focusing in Zakarpatska region, though. As for people in need, Slovakia, we are focusing mostly on Zakarpatska, helping to improve the quality of temporary shelters and collective centers. It is estimated that around 400,000 people are internally displaced in Zakarpatska region. They are staying there. They have not, or maybe don't want to cross to the EU. They are currently accommodated in schools or cultural centers. This is possible because school is working online, but the conditions are not fully appropriate. So we are very happy that we could have helped to improve the conditions in terms of delivering food, mattresses, washing machines, generators, hygienic products. So really helping to improve the quality of life in this phase of displacement. And I'm also very happy that we are currently working together with the institutions on identifying accommodation facilities and helping to scale them up for more long-term accommodation. We are also helping in Slovakia. As Ms. Brocková mentioned, the question now is more on inclusion and on helping people access basic rights, be it in education, finding employment, accessing benefits, but also connecting local host communities to incoming communities from Ukraine. And then to bridge to your second question, whether the EU and the member states have done enough, I would say so. I think all of the different actors have really scaled up their efforts. I know we are all working around the clock to do the best we can. And I think there has been an unprecedented amount of humanitarian aid, of logistic support, of adapting existing programs to support Ukraine and people in Ukraine, etc., etc. Maybe my points on what could be done more is in terms of working through civil society organizations. I know that I have read that there has been 15 million euro assigned to work through civil society organizations. I know that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also planning to publish a call to work through civil society organizations. But our work so far has been funded mostly through individuals, through companies, and then some of the major actors through UN agencies. And this is also natural in one way, that the response of the public is the one that comes the first and then slowly fades out. But then that's the point where the partnership with institutions should kick in. And we are looking forward to work also with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on delivering aid to Ukraine. In terms of working with the EU funding, and that's where I get back to also my introductory remark, out of the EU 13 countries, there's only 7 CSOs that have humanitarian partnership, or previously it was called FPA, Framework Partnership Agreement, and are thus able to access funding through DG ECHO. There's no organization in Slovakia or Hungary. So in terms of accessing funding of the EU to provide assistance in Ukraine, we see that there are some challenges for civil society, even for us as one of the biggest humanitarian organizations in Slovakia, and not yet to talk about smaller activists who have nevertheless been also very active and very crucial and instrumental in providing assistance.
Thank you, Andrea. Now that I'm on the civil society side of the aisle, that's music to my ears. Thank you for spotlighting some of the successes in your cooperation with the government and intergovernmental institutions. Now, if you allow me, I would like to go to one of our online speakers, if that's possible, and that would be our Ukrainian guest, Mr.
Hello, do you hear me? Okay. So first of all, I would like to express my deep gratitude to European people, to people of Slovakia, for all the help, all the aid we feel from the first day of war. So thank you very much for your support. We really feel the support. The second, we understand Ukraine is inspired with the support we feel from the European Union, and have no this support, the Ukrainian call to freedom would be crushed by Russian invasion. So thank you very much. Due to the question of our picture we feel here on the place, it is very close to the information have been discussed on the forum. We feel the first help to unprecedented wave of migration in first months. Then that is help for refugees to the regions of Ukraine and refugees coming abroad. Certainly, the second step, very important step, that is military support we have from Europe, and certainly that is economical and political support, including the support in our European integration, in our aim to be a part of Europe. And certainly we feel the situation on the field a bit detailed, and I would like to express this information. For example, the information about the hub of humanitarian aid that was opened in Slovakia. It helps a lot for our local communities to support people on the site. Unfortunately, the decision was very quiet to organize the hub with connection by railroad. Now we have big crisis with fuels and transport goods by railroad. That is important for us. But really, the regions that is under invasion, the regions that was newly deoccupied, have some problems to assess the information, to assess the presages, how to offer the aid, how to connect to the people who is making a decision. For example, I have some letters from Ukrainian communities. That is, first of all, that is communities newly reoccupied. They put some letters to the government of Slovak Republic and have no channel to have feedback from the government, and they don't know what organizations could cooperate. So I think the way to make cooperation better, it is to connect directly the organizations in Slovakia, in the European Union, to Ukrainian organization that is helping the people. Really, the situation in Ukraine in the first days of the war changed a lot. It was some organizations that was working during previous period, they died, and new organizations that organized by people from business, the people from practice, they started their help to Ukrainian communities, to Ukrainian army, to Ukrainian refugees, into this internal distribution. So I suppose more informational channels to exchange the opportunities could be. But in general, we are inspired with the support we have from European Union, and we hope the next step of cooperation, that would be the step of recovery, would be organized in a clear way. We have started our work with European Commission before with some projects of green projects, and now we must cooperate with local authorities, Ukrainian local authorities, to European organization about projects in recovery of Ukraine. And that is important to put clear communications between the organizations in Ukraine and in the European Union, both in Slovakia. Thank you. That is in general.
Thank you very much. I also, in the meantime, would like to acknowledge Katarína MATHERNOVÁ, that we know that you are with us on the line. She's the Deputy Director General in charge of Eastern Neighbourhood, connecting from Brussels, so welcome also.
Thank you.
It's a question that everybody likes to talk about. And so I'd like to jump into the budget before we dive into the recommendations for future action. So if you could kindly clarify to us, Michael, and also Madam Secretary, if the EU and its member states increase their budgets or they draw on funds that were initially allocated to other crises when Ukraine happened, and also what does this mean to the ability of the EU and the member states to address other ongoing and future humanitarian crises? Madam Secretary, I'll start with you.
Thank you very much. On EU matters, I think that would be a question to Michael, but I think one has to recognize the fact that we go from crisis to crisis. After COVID-19, after 2 years, we have been exhausted, and now we have to face and we have to address another crisis, and of course it has the implication for the national budgets. And one would find in individual member states very tough discussions about the possibility to help and capacity to help, and then limitations of the national budgets. Here I would say that again, we are blessed that as a members of the European Union, we have the financial sources of the European Union available. So my remark would be that to face this kind of crisis, it would be good to have a better or bigger flexibility of the EU budget to react and to respond, to be able to respond to the crisis very swiftly, and to provide the assistance needed to the member states. And also what I think in terms of the budget and capacity to react and respond is the complementarity with other agencies. And this crisis also is a good example how the complementarity and coordination should work, and what we should do to make it more efficient.
Michael, what would be your response?
Well, I can say honestly that for the time being, we have not touched any other budget. Mm-hmm. But for that, I would need to explain a little bit how the humanitarian budget of the European Union works. Half jokingly, I usually say in such discussions that we start the year with €1 and we end it with €2. It's a very unusual situation. To be honest, this year, for example, we started the humanitarian aid of the European Union with about 1.5 billion euros. I'm pretty sure that by the end of the year, when you ask me again, I will tell you, Martina, I'm proud to say that we will have ended the year with about 2.5 billion, so 1 billion more. Now, how can that be explained? The humanitarian budget of the European Union is organized in such a way that we do some sort of basic programming before the new year, based on our assessment of the many crises in the world. But then there come unforeseen issues, like, for example, last year, the crisis in Ethiopia, for example, the crisis in Belarus, like Mozambique, or in 2020, COVID. So when such new crisis comes, we have the possibility of accessing extra reserves in the European budget. And this has happened here again. So when I said that from February to May, we moved from 27 million euros for Ukraine to 243, and this is not the end of the story. This means that we have activated certain reserves inside the European Union budget. So therefore I can say with good conscience, we haven't taken a single euro cent away from our aid in Mali, from our aid in Afghanistan, in Yemen, in Syria, or in Bosnia, for example. However, the other part of truth is also that if we have more crises, and of course if now we have a food crisis in the entire world, which is inter alia also, not exclusively, but also a consequence of the aggression against Ukraine, then of course we can spend the €1 in our reserve only once. We cannot use it in Ukraine for demining and for housing, and at the same time provide more food security, for example, in Lebanon or in Yemen. So that is a problem. And therefore, I think the longer this crisis takes, and it looks like something that will accompany us for many years, if I also take reconstruction into it, the more this drags on, our leaders, and I'm happy to with a politician here, have to think about new financing models. This means extra revenue to finance both humanitarian aid and reconstruction. It means more contributions from the member states. It means innovative financing models to finance humanitarian aid. We have not yet exploited all the possibilities, for example, to mobilize private sector money, loan financing, development bank financing for the humanitarian sector. Why not, and I'm really leaving the humanitarian sector here, why not thinking of a special tax? We heard that European citizens are really going the extra mile to help our Ukrainian friends. So why not introduce, for example, a new CO2 tax or something like that, that would be used exclusively to cater for the needs that are generated by these crises, from reconstruction to, for example, food security in many partner countries in the south. But this, of course, has to be looked at the top level. This is for the Prime Minister and for the President of Slovakia, for the European Council, including any kind of flexibilization of the so-called multi-annual financial framework of the European Union. You know, 5 years ago, I would have said, okay, listen, if we need more money for humanitarian aid, let's look at the EU budget and let's transfer some funds from the agricultural budget to the humanitarian aid budget. But this doesn't work right now, because right now we need to increase food production. So it would not be a good idea to take unspent money from the agriculture budget and give it to humanitarian aid. We have to be a little bit more innovative, and that probably means also, let's say, a collective effort, not only reshuffling the budget. But for the time being, the good news is Ukraine is a major new crisis, but it is not, our effort is not financed at the expense of other crises in the world.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
If I may also to add on from the national perspective, because I spoke about the flexibility of the multi-annual framework of the EU, but also to face crisis or to address the impacts of the crisis needs the flexibility in the ODA budgets on the national level. And I think the COVID-19 was a very good example how in the last 2 years all our projects, all our programs in the ODA had to be modified and really to respond to the COVID crisis, not only in Slovakia but also in other countries, to help those which were in bigger need than Slovakia. So to help with to transfer or to modify the financial sources for humanitarian immediate help and assistance to other countries, or in the midterm for the social and economic impact of the COVID crisis in our partner countries, and also, for example, yesterday we launched the humanitarian assistance call for our NGOs to help Ukraine. So, as for the EU, that means also for the national budgets to be flexible, to be innovative, to be creative enough, to have enough room to react, to respond to the crisis.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I will only say that it's always intriguing, in a follow-up to what you, Michael, said, to look at public opinion polls, right? So I would love to see what the Eurobarometer in the future may tell us about where public and our citizens, constituents and voters feel about further aid. And thank you, Madam Secretary, for reacting to Michael. I wanted to prompt you on that, but you were faster. I'll stay with the EU for now and turn to Katarína MATHERNOVÁ.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Hello?
By the war and others, or where democratic resilience is now at a greater risk than ever before. And Belarus comes to my mind first again, but there are also others in the region. So with that, Katarína, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for inviting me, and apologies again for not being able to, due to injury, be there in person. But it's great to see you, Michael, Ingrid, and at least virtually be on the panel. let me just say three things before I react directly to the question, because I was listening to the panel with interest, and for me, the Russian war against Ukraine has really challenged some of our own long-held assumptions also about humanitarian aid. And I see sort of three characteristics that we really didn't see before. And I think they do affect now, and they will affect in the future also the way we plan both financing. Mikhail said that we need to look at new approaches. And I think the one most important thing that sticks out for me is in Ukraine, the capacity of the government, the capacity of the state, the capacity of the government at all levels, whether it's the central government, whether it's the Rada adopting laws, whether it's the fact that not a single mayor fled their community. And so through the whole multi-level governance, the state works. And this makes this war very, very different to what we are used to. And it also challenges the humanitarian model that we have now. Some adapted to it, some not so well, some late, and depends. So I think it's really something that one needs to take into account. How do we really provide assistance in a situation where it's the government that is the one functioning? And here, that leads me to my second point, that you suddenly have new actors. Our Ukrainian colleague talked about, some institutions dying and others springing up, and you suddenly have us through our long-term assistance providing for emergency needs. We immediately, as the war started reprogramming massive amounts of assistance to work through our decentralization project, to provide from sanitary support to any type of emergency support to the hromadas, to a lot of the institutions locally. Mikhail probably spoke about the civil protection mechanism that DG ECHO manages, which is in-kind assistance that was really massively scaled up to the kind of support that it was not originally foreseen. And therefore, these new actors and versus traditional ones also have been underpinned by the third point, and this is obviously only doable in a situation where the war is really geographically close to us. But there has been this unprecedented solidarity, both from the neighboring states and from further afield in Europe, of really private initiatives, municipality initiatives, regional initiatives. And I am in touch with the government on a daily basis, basically. And actually, the in the first weeks of war, these private initiatives were outpacing the official aid by quite some margin. So I think this is really important to take in, and really once the arms are down and we are able to take a little breathing space, I think this will be an important inquiry and brainstorming going forward. Now to your question, just to clarify, in DG Neighbourhood, and I'm, in addition to being a Deputy Director General, I for the last over 2 years have been the head of the support group for Ukraine, which is a task force that's been set up in 2014 and came in very handy now, but where we really champion something that's been done in the whole DG now, and that's moving away from development type of projects into supporting comprehensive reforms. And this is something we have practiced in Ukraine over the last 6 years, where you essentially marry the reform agenda with the assistance, and that's something which we are planning to do going forward. So right now we are in a process of planning further emergency assistance, whether it's budget support to help the government financing, or whether it's support to variety of state-owned enterprises, civil society, regional actors on IDP housing, for example, on farmer support, etc. So currently, we are still very much in the emergency planning, but going forward in the transformation process, we will very much go back to the idea of helping with the reconstruction of Ukraine, but hand in hand, and this is something that Ukrainian government very much appreciates, going hand in hand with the cajoling and gentle push towards the reform agenda. And this is all the more relevant now as we are drafting and developing the opinions on the membership applications of Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. This using the assistance to actually spur forward movement. So that's very much on our mind. Last week, the Commission adopted a communication that spoke about both short-term financing needs and the long-term reconstruction, where we will establish a platform not only of member states, but also other like-minded partners, bilateral IFIs, and notably our Ukrainian partners to discuss and coordinate the transformational and reconstruction effort that is going to be very, very big. But last word on Ukraine, we also spoke about the short-term needs. It was very nice to hear from a colleague on the panel that the EU has done a lot and has done enough. But unfortunately, as an international community, we haven't done yet enough on helping the government survive, because there is usually quite a decalage between pledges and actual disbursements. And part of the functioning government is that the government has expenditures, and whether it's pensions, whether it's medical care, whether it's social expenditures. I'm not even talking about the outlays for the defending themselves and the military ones, and the tax base and the whether taxes or other sources for the budget have collapsed as the economy has collapsed in the war. So this is something where estimates are between $5 to $6 billion a month that Ukraine needs just to continue functioning in a fairly low level. And I think on that, I'm very, very much hoping for continued and increased generosity, especially among EU member states. Otherwise, we would be looking at very dire scenario of hyperinflation and monetary financing, printing money, and that would be in nobody's interest. So this is on Ukraine. And when you talk about the other countries, again, I think the most important part is not to look at the financing that we have for the neighborhood and enlargement countries as development aid, because it's, again, there is always a purpose behind the funding. Whether it's with the Belarusian, with Belarus, we completely shifted into supporting whatever remains of civil society, independent media, and the opposition. We even went as far as funding civil society and media, and hope to do also with SMEs outside of the country. We, for example, support the University in Exile, which is based in Vilnius, and we will continue to do that. We actually kept the amount of resources we had for Belarus and turned it completely into civil society, media, SMEs, and the opposition. And we will continue supporting the democratic opposition with the and democratic developments in the civil society. With the and let me just finish with Georgia and Moldova. We continue supporting. We will now again have opinion on the membership prospects, but as some of you may know, it doesn't. The Commission can propose and give an expert opinion, but obviously the decision will be among the member states in the Council whether these prospects will be granted. But we certainly work very hard to give a good case, because we think that this would be important for anchoring democracy, and with the recent scary huge decrease of democracies in the world, I think we can't afford to not support the ones that are in our immediate backyard, and especially with Moldova shouldering really huge impact of the war, both on its economy and in terms of having the largest per capita migrants, refugees from Ukraine, both transiting and actually hosting a large number. It's something where they certainly need our undivided attention. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Katarína. We hear you loud and clear. At least here in Bratislava, it's very clear what the Slovaks government position on Ukraine and its Euro integration prospects are. So thank you very much for that, State Secretary BROCKOVÁ, and also Foreign Minister Ivan Korčok have been very vocal on this. So thank you for that. I imagine that our friends in Kiev appreciate that. Before we completely shift to those grand questions for the remainder of our time, let me quickly go back also to Andrea on the question of cooperation with civil society. I wanted to make sure that we are not missing out on any important points you wanted to make as far as cooperation with civil society regarding humanitarian crisis in Ukraine is concerned.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this crisis has shown us that it's really instrumental that we build on the strengths of each other, that we need each other, that we are all in this, and that we need a whole society response to be able to tackle this crisis. So, I mean, the civil society has advantages of being fast, being flexible, being on the ground, directly with the people, filling in the gaps that the government is not able to fill at the moment, communicating the needs, but also giving a feedback on what works in the field and what doesn't work in the field at the micro level. The government and the donors are shaping the policies, giving the framework. They are able to do much larger scale response than we are. And it's really about working together on delivering the best outcome for the people that need it. This crisis has also shown us that we need to be flexible because the needs are also constantly changing. Maybe also to link what you have said, maybe design a humanitarian reserve fund that can be used during onset unexpected sudden crisis, not only for the civil society but also for the government expenditures. I think the last years have also shown us that that crisis is the new normal, that we are going from one to another, that we basically need to juggle different crises at the same time, because if we focus attention just to one crisis, the other one will come to us through the back door. So preparedness and investing into preparedness will be crucial. Building agile, flexible structures, building resilience, being able to function, work in such a crisis stage of normal will be the key. And this can be then achieved through a partnership that is based on true dialogue, on trust, and really a common goal of working together.
Thank you. Feel free, State Secretary Brocková and also Michael, to add any comments you may have on the civil society angle. There has been a lot of discussion of this layer to the crisis at yesterday's meetings with mostly civil society organizations participating in this forum. So feel free to comment on this as well. We heard some criticism, but as I always say, there is always room for improvement. Nothing's perfect, really. And again, this crisis caught us by surprise to some extent, all of us, I would say. Before I turn to you to give you the floor again, to speak also about those greater implications and maybe lessons learned from the crisis, let me also ask Taras again on the line, connecting from Ukraine, what he sees greatest lessons learned to be drawn from the EU and global response to Russia's war against Ukraine.
I would emphasize that we are living in a little bit another world. Nobody can even imagine the situation would be in Ukraine. Last year, 5 months ago, we was living and we don't understand that it could be, for example, my father's house is bombed in Kharkiv. And that is really incredible. And this crisis push us to absolutely another phase. And the world is changed. And that is why we feel the world more direct. And the reaction of European Union was absolutely adequate to the situation. But really, the understanding, the temp of war in Ukraine and in European Union, a little bit another. So we must adjust the understanding, the how comprehending the world in Ukraine and European Union. And absolutely understandable, Ukrainian people have done their choice. Their choice is European way. And now the waves of support of Ukraine, I mean, including official development assistance, this must be to help to advise Ukrainian people how to change, how to be in European rules. I mean, both governmental rules and civil society traditions. The main we have catch in this situation. We are Europeans. We are committed to European community, and we need to know. We need to understand the rules how to live in Europe. So the next step for us, last 10 years, we have a lot of assistance in this way. We really have changed our mind. It was appointed a lot of processes due to decentralization focused on local communities have done in Ukraine. But the level of competence of local authorities not always fitted to the European procedures. So the next step, it is very fast in this situation to learn how to be a part of Europe. So that is the main impact for us. We have chosen our way to be how it calls to take our understanding of our life to be the part of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Taras. Let me now, with that, go to the last round of questions, really, to be able to leave some time for the discussion. And again, I would like to go back to you, Michael, and State Secretary Brocková first. I know I'm trying to fold a lot into these questions, so bear with me. You've been very generous in trying to squeeze a lot of responses into the limited amount of time that we have. So my final questions to you would be probably questions around the expectations moving forward regarding the impact of Ukrainian crisis on the national and EU development and humanitarian aid systems in terms of funding, geographic priorities. But again, feel free to comment on anything else that your fellow panelists had to say on other topics. Let's start with Michael this time.
Yeah, I think that is the really important question because it was said that the world is in constant real estate, later financial and crisis. Did it start in 2015 with the Syrian crisis and the arrival of Syrians in Central Europe? Did it start in 2020 with COVID? But we see, let's say, a sequence of overlapping crises. The old crisis is still there. We still have Syrian refugees, for example. COVID, we seem to have a consensus that there's no more COVID problem, but in reality, in my department, we have certainly 10 or 20% of the people who are sick at home with COVID. Except from civil society to government are totally overstretched. And this is a global crisis. You know, when I'm speaking to African or to Arab media outlets, for example, 2 weeks ago, I gave a big interview to a Saudi Arabian newspaper and TV channel. They are accusing us here, because of the response to Ukraine, of something between egoism and racism. They say, okay, now you're letting in the Ukrainians into the European Union, they get a right to work, they get a residence permit. You're making available hundreds of millions of euros in a very short time. What about us? And it is true. If you look at the figures of forced displacement from Venezuela, from Yemen, from Syria, from Afghanistan, if you look at the food insecurity at the Horn of Africa these days, Somalia, South Sudan, and so forth, there are crises where you have even more people suffering than in Ukraine, but they are far away. They're not day-to-day, so to say, on our mindset. We have a responsibility there. I think all these crises like Syria, but also COVID, have told us a lesson. That is, even if a crisis breaks out 10,000 kilometers from Bratislava, the results, the effects, think of the virus, can be here tomorrow morning, and we feel it. So if we want to both be truthful to our values, but also to our interests, including our security interests, we have to engage. We have to engage as states, as institutions, but also as civil society. So in other words, it would be extremely dangerous right now to kind of withdraw and say first things first, Ukraine comes first, and all the other things come later. This would, by the way, also play into the Russian propaganda, because Russia is going around in Africa and saying, hey guys, you see, the Europeans basically only think of themselves. They don't have any money for you. And it's, by the way, an effect of the European sanctions against the Russian Federation that now you're hungry, which is, as we know, crap. It is simply wrong. It's a lie. It is propaganda. But if we don't go out there, if we don't explain our position, and if we don't act for the people who are hungry, then frankly, this propaganda has an easy day. So what we need to do is, with one hand, help in our neighborhood, help Ukraine, sustain our partners there. With the other hand, not forget the other ones. Therefore, I'm very happy that in the midst of the Ukraine crisis, in April, for example, in Brussels, together with international partners, we organized two big conferences, pledging conferences, one on the Sahel and the other one on the Horn of Africa. On the Sahel, the international community pledged 1 billion euros only for food issues. On the Horn of Africa, a little bit less than 700 million. Because these are big crises where we need to engage. And I would hope that not only in future we have Slovak NGOs as partners of DG ECHO in Ukraine and in Moldova and in Belarus and in Georgia, but also in Africa, also in Afghanistan, also in South America. Because this world is indivisible, the crises are indivisible, the crises that are on other continents are with us tomorrow. And if we don't act together, we lose politically, but we lose also in efficiency, and we lose because we are not faithful to our values. I'm so happy that I'm working on humanitarian aid because it's a perfect match between pursuing our values and our interests at the same time. And I think this is something which civil society should do. When I think of civil society, I do not only think of partners that are implementing aid programs. I'm thinking also of partners who are anchored in their societies, who can have discussions, for example, tonight on Slovak TV about these issues, who can mobilize citizens, who have an educational task, not only an implementation task. And that is something I think which we all should do together. And therefore, like a good friend Jerzy Kozak, very happy that he's not only in government, but also worked in civil society. I do exactly the same thing, and I think we should all do it. We should use all the means that we have, from civil society to government and international institutions, and I think then we live up to our responsibility.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
When it comes to Ukraine, I think there are two aspects of the response. Short term, so we need to continue with our humanitarian assistance and to keep momentum of solidarity, energy, empathy. What is important really to have sustainable system in place. And I'm speaking mainly about Slovakia because there has been so much enthusiasm in the first weeks of crisis, but we need to keep the sustainability of the system in place. And then there is a long-term assistance to Ukraine, and here we speak about the nexus of humanitarian development and peace cooperation and peace assistance. And we shouldn't forget that this is the Ukraine. The problem in Ukraine is not the problem of Europe. It is a global challenge, global problem, and with two pillars: food security, energy security, and we should all together work on narrative in African and Asian and Arab countries because of this food security issue. Connected with Ukraine, unfortunately, there has been a narrative in Arab and African countries. We have to address that. Also, we need to have a better coordination on the international level. The international organizations, UN system, EU system. So there has to be the complementarity and coordination to address the crisis, not only in Ukraine but in other regions of the world. And also diversification to decrease the vulnerability of individual countries in the world in terms of energy security, food security, and other sectoral challenges. And when it comes to the national level, it's a policy issue, and really to to address all of these issues of flexibility and to provide the flexibility in all strategic documents what we have on the national level related to the humanitarian assistance and development assistance. In recent 2 years, Slovakia has been putting a lot of effort into the preparation of the new strategy on humanitarian assistance, because we see that there are some bottlenecks how we can quickly respond to the crisis in other countries, what capacity we have on the national level. So.
Thank you. And thank you for also helping me with the segue to my last question to Katarína. Speaking of the strategies, Katarína, if you can hear us, could you please maybe in a couple of minutes or even less, give us a quick update on the EU reconstruction plan for Ukraine?
Yes, I will do that. I did part of it already before, but before I do that, I cannot not react to your last question, if you allow me. And let me be a little provocative. I think that after this, when this war is over, I think the whole paradigm is shifting under our seats. I think that we will need to really, first of all, there are overlapping crises, as both Mikhail and Ingrid said. And second of all, we are now witnessing actually a permanent member of the Security Council that was an institution that was set up with the victors of the Second World War, and everything that is called the rule-based order that we were born into and live with is being undermined by this fact. And it's felt not only, I mean, it's most painfully felt by the Ukrainians, but through the energy and food crisis is worldwide. And Mikhail alluded to something that is unfortunately extremely strong, and that's the disinformation and hybrid warfare that the Russians use again throughout the world. And so I'm not sure that we will be able to, just be more flexible, just work better with the actors we have. I think we are going to have to really rethink how one addresses these crises. So I think that there is a more fundamental reckoning, because I was just the other day at an event between European parliamentarians and US Congress people, and there was just this whole discussion. Is the rule-based order really going to be these rules and that order that existed under strain, but still existed before 24th of February this year. So I think that there is going to be a little more question, including on humanitarian crises and crisis response. And I very much agree that our predictive capacity needs to get much better. We need to get much more prepared. But traditionally, it's very difficult to get large donors to part with money for preparedness. They are much easier, once they see the fires, once they see bullets going, they are more likely to shed resources than in the name of preparation. So I think this is something we'll need to probably have many fora like this to think about. And just to add to what I already mentioned before, for the reconstruction of Ukraine, as I mentioned, we will be establishing a platform that will try to confederate all like-minded partners, notably member states, but the G7, maybe others from the G20 plus the IFIs, and we plan to do it with the Ukrainian Reconstruction Council. There is still a debate in Ukraine exactly how to organize themselves, but we are in touch with ministries all across. The Rada will be very involved, as well as the interplay between the presidential administration and the government will continue. And the current estimates, what we will have to start with is damage assessment. The World Bank has already done, based on satellite imagery, some assessment, and they're starting now a more deeper assessment which we will associate with. But obviously that only can be finalized when the war is over. And one still big question is what is going to be the ultimate source of funding, because the estimates currently are somewhere between 500 and 600 million dollars of needs. Billion, sorry, I said million, I meant billion. And the war is not over. So there are going to be huge needs both in infrastructure, social capital, education, health, housing. All of that will need renewal, and we very much hope to do it, as I mentioned, together with the reform process. In other words, as we do in Europe, build back better. And for example, when you do housing, you do energy efficient housing directly. You don't build power plants the old way. You really have a chance to make a leapfrog into new technologies, environmentally friendly construction, etc. So that's something that we plan.
Yeah, thank you, Katarína. Thank you for those provoking thoughts. They could easily conclude this session. Thank you also for helping me out with the concluding remarks, I would say. Now, I would hate to wrap up without giving the audience at least a couple of minutes for any questions you may have for our panelists. So show me your hands if you're interested in asking any follow-up questions. We'll have to be quick here, but again, I would hate to leave and close this panel without giving you this opportunity. If not, I see. Go ahead, Deputy Minister.
Thank you. I just want to make one point, which was just briefly touched here, and this is the fight of misinformation. There is an army of trolls, Russian and pro-Russian trolls, waiting out there and already working on spreading lies about what's going on, how we are helping the Ukrainians, and how we are preparing for the reconstruction. So we must not underestimate this, because, and this is, I'm going to talk as a politician here. Sorry about that. If we don't win this war, it will be very hard for the governments to provide humanitarian assistance. It will be very hard to provide the very much needed resources for the reconstruction, because the general public in our countries, and we already see attempts to fight against this, it will be very hard for the democratic governments to provide this help. And it might end up with elections where populists win, pro-Russian parties win. So we have to win this war against lies coming from Russia and from trolls. I think this is very important. People in need can confirm how difficult it is. And here I see large room for cooperation between governments and civil society. And this will be a very crucial part.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we all know who are following these issues that the Czech Republic has invested tremendous efforts, including by starting one of the first centers of excellence for hybrid threats. Slovakia is now following the same path. There has been done a lot also at the EU level, but I'm afraid we don't have much more time to go into the details of these very important topics. So with that, if you allow me, I'll just have to wrap up, because I'm afraid we got to the end of our time together. I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And again, on behalf also of Ambrela, I would like to thank all of the speakers here in the room and online for joining us today. Thank you to the audience. And if you could join me in a round of applause for our distinguished speakers, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Ďakujem. A ja ďakujem.
Thank you, Martina, and thank you all the speakers. The crisis